Hello everyone, my name is Ray. Welcome to my channel. Please don't forget to subscribe. Wouldn't it be awesome if you could put together a small lathe in your shop from the stuff you already have in it? Yeah, I think that's a great idea. I have to make 2 tool handles, and the only lathe I have is Big Blue back there, and it's only a faceplate lathe. I don't have tailstock, so I can't turn any small handles. So we're going to be putting together from the stuff that I find in the shop. Let's get to it. Okay, it looks like I've got just about everything we need here. So let's look at it. We need bearings for a headstock. Let's start with that. Here we go. I've got 2 half-inch pillow block bearings. I actually have 4. I think I've had these for about 20 years. I got them a long time ago in a box of stuff, and they've been sitting around for a while. So I've got headstock bearings. We need a spindle. I've got 2 choices. Came across this. This is a shelving bracket. You screw these in to a piece of wood, and you have 2 or 3 of them. Put them in, and you hang a shelf from it. And I like this at first when I found it because it already has a threaded hole that we can use to our advantage. But it's too small. Goes right through our bearing. Too small, too sloppy. So it's about 25 thousandths too small. So that's not going to work. I have a nice threaded bolt that we could have used for the headstock. That's even smaller. That's not going to work either. I also have, which I thought would be a good idea, a part of an old bicycle rim, hub. This is a hub for a bicycle wheel. And I've got the bearings. I'm not sure. I have it all in a bag, so I took it apart from something and then never did anything with it. So I like the idea for a headstock, but it's just too small. I can't get it far enough apart. And then you don't have anything left over for a spindle. So what I did find is a piece of bar that came out of something. And I don't remember when or what it was. And it's pretty straight. And it's threaded. And here is the interesting thing about that. Whatever this was for, and it's been so long I don't remember, I have a bolt. That bolt threads in there very nicely. Turns out that this is 3/8 24. I found a couple of chucks from old drills that the drills went up, and I saved the chucks. I got the chucks. I got the keys. I wanted to use the big chuck, but I'm not going to be able to. There's no way for me to attach this chuck. However, this little guy, and for what I want, I think this is going to work just fine. This is a drill chuck. Check this out. It's the same thread as this. So all I got to do is cut. I just got to cut the screw off, and they will thread together. The problem with this spindle, it's about 3 thousandths too big. It won't go in my bearing. So the good news is I can just polish that down. Polish that down, should be no problem to get it in there. The next thing, we'll need a switch. It turns out I have 4 switches in this shop. It's a good thing because I didn't know I had these. And then I found this one. It's rated to 1.5 horses. 110 or 220. It's a 2-throw. Don't need that. Just need one side. But I got a switch already planned. The motor is my buffing motor. The only thing I had in here, I had a bunch of motors that I ended up selling them 2 years ago. But I got one left. I got this one. It's 1 horsepower. Unfortunately, it's a 3450 RPM. So I'm going to have to rig up some pulleys to shrink it down. Pulleys, you say? Over the years, I have collected some pulleys. See right there? So all I gotta find is a pulley that will fit my shaft. Huh. I think right from the get-go. Right there. That one is, it's a 5/8 pulley, but it's got a 1/2 inch spacer in it. Probably won't fit my shaft because my shaft is a little bit on the big side. I'll have to polish it. Oh, wait. It will fit my shaft. So, just got to polish it a little bit, it'll fit better. So I'm going to need a reduction, so I got to have a big one on my shaft. Okay, well, it looks like I had a 3-step pulley in this box. Didn't realize I had that in there. Which is 5/8 arbor. That'll fit right on my motor. It's not keyed. I don't particularly like that, but I think that'll work. The smallest one's going to be about 800. The largest one's going to be about 1750. This is going to work out pretty good. So, got my 2 pulleys, got my shaft, got my bearings. The next thing is the tailstock. I figured I can use this as a tailstock. I put it back together, but I have one from the shelf from one of the wheels we make. Basically, these are the same things. This is like a one that will come with a wheel. This is one that we make, well, that I manufacture in the shop. But basically the same thing. I think I'll just use this one because it's going to be easier for me to use. But this one would have worked just as well. I would have had to cut one flange off. This one's already single flange, so I'll have to make a nice hole that it presses in and put some screws and tie it in place. This looks like just wide enough for a 2x4. Sure enough, there you go. That's perfect for a 2x4. So I'll make a hole, put it in there, put some screws in. Instant live center tailstock. I'm going to clean this mess up, and then we'll get started. Alright, some unusual turn of events here. So if you recall, I was going to cut this bolt because I happen to have a shaft that fits that same thread as this chuck, so just need a piece. Thread rod would have been fine. I was going to use this little small chuck because I thought I didn't have a choice. Well, I took the polishing arbors off my motor. You can see the motor there, missing the arbors now. And I took the polishing arbors off. Here's one, and here's the other. These arbors are threaded 1/2 inch 20. And the small arbor here, the small chuck, is 3/8 24. Guess what? The chuck is also 1/2 20, and I can put the arbor right on there, and this will fit my shaft. You couldn't ask for having more stuff around like this. It didn't even occur to me that this might be the same thread, and sure enough it is. So now I have, for a lathe built from just scraps, I've got 2 chuck options. Now I've got options. I wasn't expecting anything, and now we've got some choices here. Now I don't know how good that's going to be because I don't know how straight these arbors are. It's been beaten up a little bit, so it may not be perfectly straight. I'll make it shorter, but there you go. I mean, this one's a little bit bigger. Looks like 3/4, and is that 3/4? Looks like 5/8, 5/8 and 1/2 inch. Polishing arbors. You can get these anywhere. Any Home Depot hardware store. I bought these years ago. I've been sitting on this motor for who knows how long, and now my options have opened up. So I was going to build a lathe with nothing, and now I'm going to have 2 chucks on it. That's freaking awesome. Alright, well, let's get back to the time lapse. Let me show you what I did here. Because my bearings and shaft, because they're not the right size, I need to, you see they won't fit. I need to polish this shaft down just a little bit. I mean, it's just a few thousandths. I could have done it by hand, but you know what? I had Big Blue, so I might as well use her. The only thing I had to do is I had to take the jaws off. these are the lower jaws. The upper jaws are the ones that you change. The upper jaws would not allow me to pinch down this far, and you can see that is about as far down as I could go. I couldn't really chuck up on anything smaller than this, and so I got lucky with that. That I actually could chuck that. So you know, you use what you have, and I just happen to have Big Blue, so that's what I'm going to use. But I could have polished this by hand if I really wanted to spend some time on it. But this will only take a few minutes, and you'll see that in a time lapse. All right, here we go. All right, so polishing is complete on the shaft. I went ahead and cut it off. It will just start in the bearings. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw these in the freezer, throw the shaft in the freezer. See, it will just start. I'm going to throw the shaft in the freezer, cool it down. It'll shrink it a little bit, and they should fit right in. We'll have a nice fit, and we'll see you in a little bit. Okay, well, we got pretty far in about an hour and a half. Got the beginnings of a headstock. I'll show you. Headstock bearings, pulleys on there, nice. And the chuck's on there. And you can see I went ahead and cut the head of the screw off. Fits right in there. It's actually quite nice. Let's take a closer look at this mounted on top of the wood. Here we have the headstock. I just put it on a couple of blocks of wood so you guys could see how it looks and how it works. And as a matter of fact, this just gave me the idea of how I'm going to be mounting this. So you have the pulling, the bearings you saw earlier, and watch this chuck. I'm impressed at how true it is. I was not expecting to come up with something. A piece of 2x8. I think this will make a good bed. I got a 2x4 on the bench here. And I think we're just going to see what we can come up with. I'm not exactly sure what I'm doing, but you'll see it as I develop it. Cue the time lapse. Okay, well, we have some progress. What you see is a 4-foot 2x8. Like I said, I had a 2x8 pressure treated board just sitting around. Use that for the bed, and a couple pieces of 2x4s there. So 2x8 and 2x4s. And the bearings are temporarily mounted for the moment. And there you go. The chuck works nice, and it's really, I'm surprised it's this centered. So I don't have a belt yet to mount the motor, but I'm going to be taking the belt off of my drill press. I don't have any loose belts around here, so that is the drill press has just volunteered to donate its belt. And there we have it. So up next is the tailstock. Let's see what we can come up with on a tailstock. Back to the time lapse. All right, well, we have, let me zoom in a little bit. We have the tailstock assembly. So here's the tailstock assembly. It actually slides very nicely. It's a little bit snug in the back, but this is a piece of wood, so it's not going to be perfect. And up here, it's just a tad bit on the loose side. I'll have to do something about that. But there we have it. The tailstock assembly is done. All I need to do now is drill a hole and mount my hub. And you're going to see that next. What I have here is actually a circle cutting bit for tile, and you might be able to make out that this is carbide tipped and carbide tipped. On a whim, I said, let me see if this will work in wood, and guess what? It does. And the reason I'm doing this is because I need to make a hole. You can see a couple of test holes. I need to make a hole in my tailstock assembly to accept my live center hub. Like this. So this is just about the right size. I want that to go in there relatively snugly. And that hole is actually, because it's wood, it's tight in one direction and kind of loose in the other. But I think that'll be a tap-in fit. So I'm going to go ahead and set this down and let you watch how it drills. Because I don't know, I'm going to drill that little piece of wood back there and see how it comes out. There it is. Okay, well, the hole is not perfect. I think I'll make it a little bit smaller, and that way I can sand it. But there it is. That's actually not bad. It's tight enough. I think I'll make the hole just a pinch smaller and then run it through the spindle sander to smooth it up. But yeah, that is quite a nice hole. Nice fit, I should say. There we are. You can see there's a little bit of a step in there. Not perfect. Definitely not perfect. But remember, I already had that bit. Otherwise, it would have been a job for the scroll saw to make that hole, and that was considerably easier. Just got to watch your fingers. There's a lot of stuff flying around on that bit. Okay, so I got the hole in there. As you saw, I went from both sides because the bit is not long enough. And you can see it's a little bit under. It will just start. So that gives me enough room to go ahead and sand it. And I will just put in the spindle sander and just gently clean that up until this is a tap-in fit, and that will basically finish the tailstock. I just have to put in a center. All right, let's get to that. Alright, we have made some progress today. Check it out. Headstock, tailstock. That's very nice. Total elapsed time since we started this project, including part 1, it's been about 4 hours. So not bad for half a day. I think another half a day or so we'll have this project complete. And the best part of all, keep in mind, this is all stuff that I found here in the shop. It was all here. I have yet to buy anything, including any of the fasteners. Everything was here. The best part about it, homemade lathe, made from stuff lying around. Live center, check it out. Live center for the tailstock. Bicycle wheel hub. An unusual hub, but I think any bicycle hub will work. If you're thinking about making a homemade lathe, and I hope after seeing this set videos, this series of videos, you're thinking about it. Maybe you got a few things lying around. Maybe some of them are good for a lathe. Maybe you need a lathe to build. Not a bad example. No plans, didn't have any concept, just built. Bicycle wheel hub live center, unbelievable. We got to finish this up today. I got to make a center for it. I got a couple of ideas. We got to go looking for some parts, and you'll see that in a second. And we've got to figure out how to tie this thing down. We need to find some handles. Handles, guess what? Like my box of pulleys, I have a box of nothing but handles. So, we'll get started. Old router handles, drill handles, angle grinder handles, more router handles, broken handles, knobs. That's a promising knob. Check out these knobs. Well, I'll find something in here, but let's get started. Let's get started by finishing the center on this tailstock. For the center, we need to find a bolt. I happen to know that this is clearance for a 3/8 bolt. 10mm will also work. So we need to find a bolt to go through here. 3 inches, I don't think I'll have anything like that, but if we get lucky, there might be some threaded rod somewhere in here. So let's go to the time lapse and see what we can find. Okay, so here's where we are. I know that the axle that goes through this hub is 3/8 of an inch. I've got one, actually I have a couple of these, but I found one that would fit a 3/8mm screw, but if you look close, or bolt I should say, it's too sloppy. I don't like that much play. It might cause us a little trouble turning later. So I also had a little piece of 10mm threaded rod. I went ahead and cleaned. You can see how rusty this has been sitting around a while. Cleaned up the ends on the stone. And you can see that this actually sits in here much better. It's not perfect, but it's better. But guess what? Since I've got a little bit of everything, I've got this stuff called Shimminacan. If you enjoy the 60s, 70s styling of this product, that's for good reason. It's 5/1000ths of an inch thick. And I cut a few strips. And I took those strips and I rolled them into a cylinder. So whenever you do this kind of thing, you always want to make sure that when you roll that cylinder, that the ends do not overlap. There's a small gap here between the ends. Not sure if the camera's picking that up. I'll make a close-up of that in a minute. Okay, here you see that aluminum sleeve up close. You can see that it was actually from flat, and I rolled it up. The way I rolled it up, I just put it on this rod and I wrapped it around there. So you can see when I have this threaded rod in here, and you can see that if I pinch it all the way down, get it tight, 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 you can probably make out that it's still got a gap in there. So that's very important. You don't want that to overlap. So if the ends overlap, what's going to happen is it's going to be twice as thick at that point, and it's going to hold it off center. So you always want to make sure you don't overlap the ends. They can be close, but as long as they don't overlap. So take this, I'm going to put one in this side, put one right in there, and I'm going to take the other one and I'm going to put it in on this side. Okay? I could actually make one, but this was easier to do. Then put my threaded rod in, my 10mm threaded rod, and look at this. Hardly any play at all. In fact, my measurements say that there was about an extra 5/1000ths of play in there, which is perfect because we could use that to advance the center. Something this thin, I'm only going to let it move about 1 inch. Alright, so what I think I'm going to do next is chuck this up. I'm going to spin this in the drill, hit it on the stone, and make a point. Let's take a look at that. Okay, this is my rotary tool station. If you like it, I have a video on it. I don't have a big shop, so I gotta have some space, and I have all kinds of tool storage inside. But we are going to do this right now. Alright, here we have it. I'm going to spin it in the drill so you can see how that's pretty nice. That's nice and center. I know the focus isn't picking up right now. Well, here it is. We got a center in there. That is going to be just absolutely great. Got nuts on both sides. And I have just enough length here that I can possibly put a handle on it. But being that it's only 10mm thick, I don't think I want it sticking out too much further than that. So I'll just have the handle just to advance it from 0 to about 1 inch. I wouldn't want it going any further than that. But that is not a bad center. I mean, that is a live center. Think about a live center. That's awesome. Alright, I'll show you what I've been doing. I've been using the radial arm to plunge a groove down this board. I'm going to cut 2 grooves and then drill the ends and take out that little piece of wood. So it'll basically be splitting this board into 2 ways. Left about 4 inches on the end so I can keep it intact, and of course we have all that down there. What I found in my box of handles is a great little offset handle. So I'm going to use that for tightening and loosening my tailstock. Think it'll work, and so if it doesn't work for my tailstock, it will definitely work for the tool rest. But it sticks a little high for that. So I also have a 1/2 inch bolt left over from doing my big blue lathe down there. This one was a little too short, so it's going to finally get some life, get to do something. Alright, so let's get back to it. There we are. 2 slots cut right down the center, nice and precisely. I did it at 9/16. The bolt's 1/2 inch, so I'll have a 1/16 inch of clearance. I just have to drill a hole here and finish this up, and I'll drill a hole there and finish that up. So we're going to see this put together pretty soon. All we will need is to get the tool rest and attach the motor, and we will have a running lathe. Look at that, nice and straight. That's the most critical part. Let's take a good look at that. Nice and straight. That's what I like. Okay, so the bolt, you can see, will go the other way, obviously from the bottom up, but it goes right through there, no binding. Everything is nice and smooth. Now all we have to do is mount the tailstock. So I'm going to mark where that is, so we know where that slot, where that hole has to be drilled. I have to take this center back out, but we will mark that and then see how she clamps. And I still have to make up a nut, but that shouldn't take too long. Coming through, as you notice, I took the headstock off to make my life a little easier cutting that groove, but I'll put it back on. So I decided to check how true my homemade tailstock center, you can see right here, with my 10mm threaded rod. You see, I've got this indicator set to 0 right about there. Got it set to 0, and it's actually just a little bit. It's about 1/1000th off of 0. So if I rotate this, you'll see that we'll get to right there, right about 10/1000ths of an inch. So that means that this is off by 10/1000ths of an inch. And if you, for those of you who are not familiar with that unit of measurement, that is 0.010 inches. So quite an insignificant amount when you consider this is a homemade lathe with a bicycle hub and a piece of threaded rod sharpened with a drill and a grinder. Nothing fancy, nothing special, and I'm within 10/1000ths. I will take that all day long. So let's mount this tailstock and see how far we can get tonight. Okay, one of the things we need to do is think about our spur drive. I gotta drive this thing from the headstock somehow. So I was thinking about that. So this is what I think I'm going to do. I'm going to take this carriage bolt, I'm going to cut it off, and I'm going to use a wing nut. I'm going to grind this wing nut flat, put 2 edges on it, and I'm going to spin grind the point of this threaded portion into a point. So I can have a spur drive, homemade spur drive, to fit in our lathe chuck. Alright, let's go take a look at that. Well, as you saw, I started with a carriage bolt, much like this one. I cut it out over the middle right there, cut both ends off. Went ahead and ground the tip, you saw that. I also took a wing nut, ground the ends off square, as square as I could, and put a bevel on there. You can see the bevel on both sides. If you do this, make sure you put it on the correct side. Just a little advanced heads up there. So I'm going to put this together. There you go. I'm using a washer just in case, because I made the part long, so in the event that it's a little bit that needs adjustment, I have room for adjustment. I'm going to put in the headstock. The headstock is loose right now because I'm still working on the base, and I'm going to tighten this up, and there you have a homemade 2-prong. Let's take a closer look. A homemade 2-prong spur drive. Now this is a small lathe, so I'm not going to do anything super huge. So I think this will be more than adequate for what I have to do. Now I might have to adjust this length here, which I can do. I can always take a little bit more off. But for starters, this will get us going for starters. Very well, we have made some pretty good progress today. We've got the center slot cut, so it'll allow me to bolt all my accessories, tailstock, tool rest. And if I didn't mention it before, you can see I have some runners under this tailstock right here, both sides. The reason is this is a board, you know, it's just a standard board. I don't have a planer, and it has a little cup in it. So I put these two little runners so the hump of the board wouldn't affect the tailstock. We got the tailstock live center. Right now it's loose. I don't have it tightened. You can see it's loose there. But it's a nice live center. We ground that tip. We have the two-prong spur drive for the headstock. You can see that, very nice. Didn't cost a penny. I already had these parts in here. And the tailstock is mounted and ready. One of the things I realized is because of the head of the bolts, you can see right here, and I'm going to have one for the tool rest as well. I need to raise this bed. This bed has to be elevated. It's too low. So to sit on a workbench. So I'm going to have to raise it, and luckily I have a piece of 2x4 I think I'll use for that. And we have to make a tool rest and mount the motor and take the belt off the drill press. And right now this is loose. We'll just tighten that back down, and we'd be able to start running on this. So I'm very excited. So far, zero cost, and I'm surprised that we were able
I'd like to raise the bed, make a tool rest, and possibly mount the motor. So stay tuned. Okay, so what you've been watching me do is take some measurements and try to figure out what I'm going to do for the tool rest. I have this chunk of steel that came with a vise that I have mounted to my drill press. I actually have two of these that have been sitting around for years. So I think I'm going to take this piece of steel and I'm going to cut it right here, or a little bit, yeah, somewhere around there. Let me see. Yeah, I'm probably going to cut it somewhere around here. Because I already have a slot in it. Now, the slot in my bed is for 1/2 inch, but guess what? This does not fit. Obviously, I didn't plan on what I was going to use here. But I do have a carriage bolt that fits perfectly. Look at that. Fits perfectly in this slot, but it's too loose in the slot of my ways here. So I had some aluminum tubing in a box. I'm going to put this aluminum tubing in here as a sleeve to take up some of that gap, so I don't have that much loose play in there. So this looks like it's going to work pretty good. If I put this in here, that's going to work just fine. And on this end, I'll mount my tool rest. So the tool rest. I looked around here. You saw me pacing around looking at everything. What I settled on was taking this piece of 4x4, and you can't see it, but I'm gonna cut this up into a suitable tool rest that I'm going to mount on here. So let's get to that. Okay, well, there is my little quick tool rest. Nothing fancy. You know, I can always modify it later, but what I wanted to have is a nice wide footprint on the bottom. Let's see how she will fit. Okay, so one of the things I've been doing that you saw in the video is I took my bolt that I'm going to attach my tailstock with, and I drilled a hole in it. You saw that at the drill press. What I'm going to do is going to put this pin in, but first I have to assemble this because I will not get a chance to do it once the pin is in place. So I'm going to assemble this now. So the way this bolt is going to work is this pin is going to prevent it from spinning when I'm tightening or loosening my tailstock. So I don't have to have a wrench at the bottom. This pin will lock it in place. I'll show you a close-up of that. So this is the bolt with the pin that runs through it. And I've got a washer on it. You have to put the washer on before you put the pin in, or you're not going to get it on. So the way it works, I'm just going to put it in from this side so you can see it, is you can see the pin right there. It's kind of dark in here, but you can see the pin will not let that bolt rotate. So it's an effective stop for using right here in the lathe. Alright, so here is that bolt with the rod through it. You will see it's going to go in through the slot, and now it is locked. It won't spin when I want to tighten something down. So I'm going to put the tailstock over the bolt. I'm going to put a washer, a lock washer, and a nut. So now I can tighten this nut up. You see, right now it's loose. I can tighten this nut up without having to worry about it spinning. There it is. Tailstock is locked in place. No worries about spinning. So now let's get our attentions to some of the other parts I've been working on. So, like I said, I had two of these. I cut the end of it off. This is what it looked like when I started. So that was before, this is after. I went ahead and sanded the bottom, and I'll show you why. So to attach my tool rest, I'm going to end up using this carriage bolt, and it's going to end up, the head is going to end up striking the table, so I need to lift it up. Now, I was going to put a couple of wooden pieces and epoxy them in place, but I had an aluminum bar. It's actually a 1-inch bar. I cut to length and actually cut down the middle. I didn't show you how to do that because I don't want anybody risking it. You really need to know what you're doing here if you're going to use a radial arm or woodworking tools to cut aluminum. So I didn't show that. I didn't want anybody taking an unnecessary risk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to epoxy these under this to have little runners or spacers, so I can then have my tool rest. I could slide it back and forth. So if I were in the shop, I probably would have just machined it, but you know, we're not. This is doing it right here in this little shop with nothing else. The other thing is I made the tool rest. So this is a tool rest out of a piece of 4x4, nothing special there, and it's going to mount right in here. That's the nice thing about using a carriage bolt, because this is the same size, so it doesn't spin. The square on the carriage bolt is the same size as my slot, so it doesn't spin. So I need to take these and I'll be epoxy them in place right there, and you can see I will have plenty of room for clearance on the head of my bolt. So, as you know, that if I try to use this piece of wood with a gouge, I'll be making another one of these pretty soon. So, what I did is I had a piece of stainless out of my metal bucket. So, it was actually longer. You can see this was how it was originally, and that was not going to work. It was just too floppy. That's not going to work. So, you saw me hitting this piece of metal with a hammer to get it to shape, so it would match that shape. So this will mount here. Now, and it's stainless steel, which I don't like. I would have preferred regular steel, but at least I don't have to worry about it rusting. So now I'll have a nice, smooth surface to run my tool on. So you'll notice this tool rest is not adjustable up and down. Honestly, for what I'm going to be doing, it's not necessary. Could we have done that? Yeah, it would have taken a whole lot longer.
And for me, for the purpose of this particular lathe, not necessary, so I'm not worried about it. But what I do need to do is be able to adjust it, and with having the runners underneath, I can do that without having to worry about worried about the head hitting the bed of the lathe. So one of the last things that I wanted to make sure I covered is the handle for the live center. So in my box of handles, which you saw earlier, I had this little handle here. It was from an old fence of something, router fence or something. So what it is, I took my aluminum rod. So there's my aluminum rod that I cut earlier, and I made this piece for a spacer for the tool rest. And I put a little spacer right in here. It just happens to fit perfectly. There we go. And what I'm going to do, slide this over, is put it on my tool rest. I'm sorry, my center. And you can see that the purpose of that spacer is to make it so it doesn't wobble. So I have some nuts here. I'm going to put my nuts on. Wait, my nuts on. Going to tighten this up. Can't go too crazy. And now I have this tool rest where if I hold the nut, I can adjust it. I'm sorry, my center, not my tool rest, my center. And now I have a center that I can adjust, like so. That's not bad. So I'm going to just set it right here, tighten up the two nuts. Okay, we have the tool rest completed. I went ahead and epoxied that in place. I went ahead and epoxied these rails. I've just got it together so I don't lose any of the pieces. But it fit perfectly. You're going to see this all together real shortly. Now what I like to do is raise the bed. So I'm going to raise the bed and also provide a place to attach the motor. We're going to take the belt off the drill press and get it walked up.
The motor mounting is very, very close to completion. I made here, you can see I made 2 parallelogram slots, and that's for the bolts to go through. And I'm going to drill and tap this piece of aluminum for some bolts, and it's actually going to go underneath and it'll clamp. Hopefully it'll work correctly. I think it will. It'll just clamp the motor in place. So you can see the motor and the belt off of the drill press. You saw me take that off. Is already in position. So the motor is not going to be super tight onto the. I'm sorry, the belt is not going to be super tight. I don't want it to transmit vibration into that spindle because it is only 1/2 inch. So I'm going to keep the belt a little bit on the loose side and should help absorb some of that vibration. All right. The bar is not just acting as a clamp, but it's also acting as a nut. And because the two are tied together, they don't spin. So very nice, easy way to solve this problem. I was just going to go ahead and change the rotation of the motor, but I figured, you know what? Maybe you guys want to see how this works. So I'm going to try to do my best to get it on camera. That's it. That is reverse rotation right there. Let's plug her in and find out. Yep. Okay, so got the motor reversed and running. I think we'll call that an into part 4. And just kidding. Oh man, can you imagine all the angry comments I would have gone through if I got this far in part 4 and I didn't turn a piece of wood? Yeah, I'm going to turn a piece of wood. Let me put this thing back together. You're going to see that in time lapse. And we're going to see how she works. Obviously, I still got to put a switch on it and a little other little details. But I think she's ready. Okay, you may have seen this thing running in time lapse, but there was a little hiccup. Nothing major. I'm not sure if you'll be able to pick that up, but this hole has shrunk. It has shrunk in the time between putting it together and now, and it shrunk so much. The fit was nice and tight, but you can see on this hub it has a lip on the outside, and this was rubbing on the inside of this piece of wood. So I'm going to get the Dremel tool, clean that out because I don't want to do the entire length. I just want to do right where it needs it. And I'm going to clean that up and then put it back in, and we will get to running. You're not going to see any of that in the time lapse. I'm just going to cut it right out. This is what you've all been waiting for. There she is. Lathe assembled, complete. So headstock is good. There you can see the live center. I had to clear the back end. You can see the back end. I had to give it a little bit more room so it wouldn't rub. But now, and yeah, of course, because that's on a rod, the handle spins. Just not gonna stick my fingers in the way. It's that simple. There we are. So I'm gonna go ahead and set the camera up. You can see we've got good alignment on the pulleys. I'm gonna go ahead and set the camera up and just turn this little. You guys ready? I'm ready. Hope you're ready. I'm ready. Is it just me, or does that look a little bit disproportional? It's the smallest roughing gouge I've got. There it is, the lathe made from just the stuff I already had in my shop. Nobody is more surprised that this was even possible than me. Believe me, you guys might enjoy it, and you guys have put a lot of comments, and I appreciate all the comments you've made. But nobody is more surprised that this was possible than I am. Obviously, I made Big Blue. It cost me about $900 to make Big Blue. This lathe here, $0. I have not spent a penny. Now, that is not the true cost, because the actual cost, at some point in time, I bought this stuff. You know, I had it lying around here. At some point in time, I paid something for this stuff that I'm using. But it was all stuff I had here. So, and stuff that has been sitting for years. I know you guys have stuff sitting, stuff that you don't know what to do with. You know what? If you're thinking about a lathe, I'm telling you, this was a very satisfying project. I'm going to call this the end of part 4. If you guys want to actually see this completed 100%, turning the tool handle that I intended to make and build this lathe for, let me know in the comments. I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, but if you guys are interested, I will go ahead and do it. Thank you all for watching. I appreciate it, especially all the ones you guys seen of all these parts. And don't forget to subscribe, you know, and any comments you might have, any questions, please put them in the comments. I read every single one, and I respond to most. So please leave a comment. Thank you very much. Don't forget to subscribe, and look forward to the next project.